Okay, we'll try and have a little fun. I'll try not to bore you. But I think the first question is PUE the be-all and end-all? I think the answer is no. It's all very good to have great data centre cooling, power, everything else, but if your IT gear is not virtualised and you've got apps on wrong machines and you've got a whole lot of inefficiencies there, well, then you're still going to be chewing up a lot of electricity. So at the end of the day, it's critical that we try and work on the IT component, and that way we can save a lot of white space for the physical gear and thus save heaps of money. Okay, that's the agenda. So that's basically what we're going to go through, so I'm not going to bore you and read it through. So let's get right into it. This is a little slide on the best DCs around the world. So we've got Yahoo in Lockport, New York, carbon-free, run on hydroelectric power. And then we've got Google with a PUE of 1.12 within the US, running on wind power. And then we've got Apple, the new data centre in North Carolina, running on fuel cells and solar power. 1.1 PUE. So basically, this is the world's best, pretty much. Unless I've missed something, I'm open to hear of any others that go below that mark, but that's pretty good. Okay, definitions. PUE. Everyone knows what PUE is, but the question is, how is it to be measured? Now, do we measure it for one night in the middle of winter time at midnight? Do we measure it over a 1 week period? Do we measure it with the UPSs on bypass? How do we measure it? Well, I like to measure it very much on an annual average, the whole year, through the UPSs, as it should be, and that way we get a true, what I call a true PUE. You cover 4 seasons, hot seasons, cold seasons, whatever, and we get the best possible reading on the PUE. So that, when I talk about PUE, that's what I'm referring to. Where? I'll be putting up some examples, and when I talk about PUE 1.1, I'll be very much talking about a Melbourne location in terms of geography. If I talk about a PUE 1.07, I'll be probably talking about a Canberra location. So just so we get it in context of this particular discussion. Technology religion. Technology religion means there are certain people that are in love with certain vendors, you know, for whatever reason. It happens to all of us. We do it at home. We also do it in this industry. So some people are very much followers of one brand and another of a different brand, and so it goes. So that's technology religion. And then we have agnosis. And agnosis means being truly vendor agnostic and basically saying, okay, well, what's actually going to work best in this situation? You know, what best of breed products? So we've got a product from that vendor and a different one from the other one. What's the best way to make it all work? A bit like a jigsaw puzzle. So that's what I call agnosis, being truly agnostic about various products and types of technologies as well. Again, goes back to technology religion too, where we talk about some people say, oh, hot oil containment. It can only be hot oil. And the next person will say, oh no, it's got to be cold oil containment. And one person will say, oh, raised floor, oh, that's prehistoric. We've stopped using that since the Dark Ages. And someone else will say, no. Actually, there's a whole lot of good use for raised floors in certain scenarios. So it's all about being open to different technologies rather than being beholden to one particular technology per se. Horses for courses, basically. Okay, example. Just imagine that this is a data centre of about, what have we got? We've got about 200 racks here, 400 square metres. Inside we have hot oil containment. The circles are chimneys going up to a hot air plenum, and with a solid rear door on the racks. We have a cold aisle contained with perspex on the top and doors at either end. So we actually have room for much bigger delta Ts. And then on the outside of the room, in the perimeter hall, we have these evap units, or shall I say groups of evap units, similar to the one, or there was a demo one that we had here. And so don't look at it and say, oh, it's one 100 kilowatt unit. It could be a group of a number of them bunched up together. But that's a basic layout. And yes, it's on a raised floor, 1 metre high. That's a bit of a side view, a bit of the different angles. So you can see the chimneys, you can see the cold aisle, you've got the raised floor, you've got the hot air plenum up the top. And then, again, these evap units in a rough form, taking in outside air, and then running it through the system, running through a mixing box, depending how much return air has to come back in, and so it goes. So that's the example that we're putting up. Again, another view, looking at it from the other angle. Again, you can see the raised floor. We're looking at it from the sides, so the rows of these cooling systems. Now, this starts to get interesting. Okay, this is what I call modular flexibility. One of the major issues in data centres is all about how do we make it flexible? How do we grow? Typically, we start a new facility, we might start at 10% load. And of course, the PUE ain't too crash hot at 10% load. Okay, when are we going to reach a reasonable load? When do we get to 50 or 60% to start to get the figures to look respectable? Don't know. Will it be in 2 months? Will it be in 6 months? Will it be in 12 months? No one knows. It just depends, as the place gets filled up, I suppose. So this is a problem, and it's been a dilemma, I would suggest, for time immemorial. And so what people have done is resorted to modular solutions. Okay, we'll get a module with 10 racks or 20 racks, and we'll slot it in. And very nice if you're doing them one at a time. But if you're going to have 30 of them, it suddenly becomes uneconomic and very expensive, and the PUE then as a whole is not too good. But it works out okay in the beginning. So how can we gain flexibility without spending a fortune and maximising resources, and without compromise to reliability or the nines? Well, here it is. There we go. Just imagine if we had first customer, say this is a co-location facility, first customer says, okay, I got 20 racks. So you fill up with 20 racks. Well, what, do we have to have everything all switched on? No, it'd be pretty expensive if we did that, wouldn't it? So what we do here is we run a set of baffles under the floor here across to there. So the air that comes from here is only going to sit under here. No leakage. We'll have silicon. We'll block off any leakage area. And so therefore, this is the only area that will cop the air. What does it mean? It means my PUE is going to be maintained at a pretty good level. Okay, not maximum, but it won't be far off the best possible PUE, unlike the traditional design. So, because we don't have leakage, there's no air escaping under here. And here, we've only got vents in the cold aisle here. And otherwise, there's no air going anywhere else. So what do we do with this space? Well, guess what? We can make use of this. We can make it a staging area. We could turn it into office space. And we can have separate metering to ensure that we're monitoring the power used as a non-data centre type usage, and therefore not waste this space. And so, okay, if suddenly this customer says, oh, actually I want to fill up this space now, I've got another 20 or 30 racks coming in, we pull out the baffle here, we run a baffle all the way down here, staging area moves, off we go to here. And so we keep expanding without losing any efficiency whatsoever. That means we'll maintain close to the stated PUE, and in this case, a PUE of 1.1, because we're running a system that has a COP of anything up to about 30. So pretty efficient system. We're not running compressors. We're not running, the only refrigerant is tap water. That's it. There's no chillers or anything. So just running a bunch of EC fans, basically. And we'll be running them at low speed, which provides maximum efficiency. Also, we'll have a high delta T. Basically, we'll be supplying air at about 25 degrees, 24 degrees, and we'll have return air coming out somewhere around about 38, 40 degrees, depending. And that way, what that means is the fans will be rotating at a much slower speed, thus saving more money. So this is what I call modular flexibility. Now what happens is once this fills up, and then we can take away all the baffles, and as we fill up these areas, then we just have the one baffle at the end if this is all that's left. And we get rid of this and say we don't have a staging area left. Well, as we start filling up, part of the plan for the data centre is plan B, to build another area next to the side of this facility, this room, which will be the final staging area. Because it may be that we never fill this space totally. Maybe. We're not sure. I mean, we plan to fill it up. But there are some occasions that it won't, which means we might have a space like this left for staging. And we don't have to build stage B here for a separate staging area. So we've actually saved a bit of money. So, but if we see that we're filling up all this space and there's very little left, okay, well then we'll build our staging area later on. So we have to spend all the money up front. And also, the electricity that's used here is diverted to a different purpose and not the data centre. Again, making sure that we keep PUE to a minimum, so we don't have the issue of high PUEs while we're growing the facility, and nor do we need to plan for data centres with modules, so we can save some money, because the module type designs and modules and cells cost more money. Well, this doesn't actually cost a lot of money at all. That's what's so nice about this solution. So it gives ultimate flexibility. And again, that's just an example of how it might look from the side. You know, got a few racks here and a few racks there. Okay, critical issues. Airflow management. A lot of reference to this in the EU Code of Conduct for data centres. Excellent reference. It can be downloaded from the web for anybody. A lot of the new standards, ISO standards that will be coming in about 2 years' time under SC 39, Standards Committee 39, being developed out of Europe and the USA as we speak. And though the EU Code of Conduct is an excellent guide, it won't be nearly as specific as the ISO standards, which will come with a whole lot more detail. But the general standards will come out of the EU Code of Conduct, both in terms of IT workload and data centre infrastructure. So airflow management. So are we putting blanking panels in the racks? Have we blanked the sides of those racks off so there's no cold air escaping into the hot aisle? Are we making sure there's no leakage under the floor? Are we ensuring that the tiles are not leaking in between somewhere in the room? All sorts of things like that. Air leakage is critical. You're losing air, you're losing energy. It's as simple as that. It's pretty basic. Also what happens is, as you get more leakage, your delta T decreases. And as the delta T decreases, what happens is your fan speeds go up. And again, your energy consumption goes up along with it, and your PUE goes up along with that. Not a good result. Outside air economisers, again, wherever we can use outside air and use the natural environment to cool, why shouldn't we? because at the end it's great for the environment and it's great for our bills, for our data centres. And we're not compromising anything as long as we have filtration arranged correctly. Thermal fabric. Okay, what's the thermal fabric of the building like? What sort of material is the building made of? Do we have coatings on the roof to prevent the heat from the sun going through? Have we got a hot tin roof that'll actually multiply the heat factor? What are the walls made of? You know, how do they affect the environment? So thermal fabric. Power losses. So what sort of UPSs have we got, for example? What's the power factor? Some of the older UPSs, even not too old, have a power factor of 0.8, which is pretty poor. Pretty poor. The newer ones are much better, right? So typically you're going between 0.95 and 0.98 with the newer UPSs, so minimise losses. Another area and way to reduce losses is looking at DC power. That's an option. It's a little more complex, but that will assist in saving losses. Flexibility, cooling distribution, use of space. Again, in the diagram that I showed earlier, we have pressure management. And when we talk about pressure management, we're saying, okay, well, if there are some servers in one area in a few racks that are working a lot harder than somewhere else in another part of the data centre, well, I want air flowing to those areas on demand when I need it and not paying for it. So typically an older data centre, you'll have, say you've got 500 kilowatts of cooling, it'll be set to 500 kilowatts of cooling, even though it might only need 200 kilowatts of cooling, but it still produces 500 kilowatts of cooling. Whereas with pressure management, we say, okay, aisle 2, we need a whole lot more air, the pressure differential goes beyond 20 pascals, please increase the fans, we need some more volume of air, please. Out it comes, and we provide air on demand, and that means we provide 500 kilowatts of cooling for 500 kilowatts of genuine IT load. If the IT load is 300 kilowatts, then we'll cool 300 kilowatts. That's what it's designed to do. That's flexibility. So that way, if I've got 40 kilowatts in one rack, so I've got an area with a bunch of supercomputers, but it only happens to be in one or two racks, and then the rest of the racks around it might be 3 kilowatts, well, I can handle that under this arrangement. So again, all comes down to flexibility. Monitoring and DSIM. There's an old saying in our business, you can't manage what you don't know. Pretty hard anyway. If you're not accurately metering all your devices, all your cooling systems, individually and collectively, all the racks, and all the other items, lighting, UPS, other powered areas, battery rooms, whatever. We need to monitor every single thing we can get our hands on. The plant, the chillers, the pumps, whatever, the whole box and dice. It is only then that we can properly analyse and ensure that we're getting best possible bang for buck. And it might be, for example, that maybe the chillers are not performing all that well, or if there are DX systems, again, not performing that well, and a recommissioning, for example, might make a big difference. You don't have to spend a lot of money doing that. So, monitoring and DSIM. And there's all sorts of DSIM out there. There's some good ones, some bad ones. But DSIM, again, I think is critical. It means we can make intelligent decisions, provided we've got the information. But without the information, it's very hard to make intelligent decisions. And so we need to do that in real time. And that's what DSIM provides, provided you've got the metering in place. If you haven't got the metering in place, it doesn't matter what DSIM you have, you're not going to get data. So you're going to have problems. No use just getting some logs out of a UPS. It's not enough. Not enough at all. So monitoring is absolutely vital to keep managing a facility. Tier levels, reliability, and no compromise. So when we talk tier 2 or tier 3 or a tier 4, not aware of a tier 4 in this country, but I stand to be corrected. It is critical that we have no compromise. So whatever design that anyone puts out, we've got to ensure that reliability and resilience are in no way compromised, because that's how we live or die in our business. So that's an obvious one. Innovation and more innovation. It's critical that we see innovation in our industry, because that's what's going to drive much higher efficiencies and even more reliability and reduce costs. So it's a matter of keeping out and a lookout on all sorts of technologies. Now, there are some good ones out there, and there's some so-so ones. We need to check it out and see, is this valuable? Does it really work? If it does, okay, how well does it work? What can we do with it? Where can we and where can't we use it? But there's a lot of great stuff out there right now that can be used, and that can save a lot of money and then provide a low PUE, such as what we've seen here, where we can provide a data centre in Melbourne with a PUE of 1.1 using evaporative systems called Climate Wizard, which is made by that company Sealy International. They make Bonaire and Bremer and a few other things. But that's a new technology. And so when you're running COPs of 30, you're going to have a mechanical PUE of roughly around 1.05. By the time you've got losses and a little bit of power for lights and a few other things, you'll get to 1.1. IT infrastructure, integration. This is something that Google is absolutely brilliant at. So what they do, when servers come in, they strip them down. They literally strip them down bare. They rebuild and design their own racks, and then they put DC power rails in, so they run everything on DC power. And they also integrate applications, so they ensure that web applications are running on 1RU pizza boxes and virtualized, and large database apps are running on blades and so forth, and virtualized, and absolute maximum utilization rates. So they're right on top of this. So the more we can learn from this, I think it'll bode very well for us. Last item on the agenda on that one, attitude. Now, there are some people out there that will say, I'm there. We know it all. We have all the answers for the data centre. Don't you worry. We'll sort it out. Well, actually, nobody has all the answers, because it's a continual evolution. Our industry is evolving continuously. And so therefore it's a continuous learning exercise. Look, I might know what's around at the minute. Even then I miss a whole bunch of things. So I'm trying to find and catch up if I have missed something. So we're constantly learning. I'm constantly looking for newer technologies and other ideas. How can we make it better? Why do we have to do it the way we've done it for the last 100 years? Or maybe in data centres speak 5 years. How can we improve? Do I have to use the old ways? Do we use the, if it ain't broke, don't fix it thing? Or do we say, well, can we innovate and make a real major improvement? So these are the questions that face our industry, and I think if we can open our minds, if we can look to the future and look to newer technologies that are coming down and evaluate them properly, and then utilise them, I think we'd be a lot better for it, and not be so, to a point, not so risk averse. But checking out the technologies thoroughly. There's a lot of great stuff out there. Not all of it's good, but there's some gems out there. So it's a matter of capturing those things. Okay, reliability and cost. They're, I think, two major items on the agenda of most of us. So the nines. There's just no compromise here, so I think that's an open and shut case. The nines are the nines, whatever we decide, whatever tier level we decide, then we've got to stick with that and maintain that. Do we need to spend more while improving quality, and how? Okay, well, no, we don't need to spend more, actually. We could probably spend less. And we can do it and improve quality at the same time. But that's a matter of how one goes to market. There are different ways of doing it. But whatever and whichever way you do it, it's great to do it in such a way where there's a strong focus on outcomes. In other words, if someone says, I promise to do this, well, then whoever it is, they should do it. And make sure that outcomes are delivered and that there's a strong focus on service delivery. Some companies are good at service delivery and others are not. So great dealing with companies that are focused on good service delivery because you're more likely to have your promises honoured. And there's plenty of good companies out there. Can we maximise flexibility without the huge extra cost? Well, if we look at Google, Yahoo, Facebook, all those guys, I think they spend a few dollars on their facilities. And I don't think we have the budgets here to spend their kind of dollars. So do we need to spend the huge extra cost? No. The design that I put up there, each lot of those units are not particularly expensive. In fact, they're cheaper than crack units and a lot less plant and much less maintenance. So at the end of the day, it can actually be done at a pretty respectable price. So no, it doesn't have to be at extra cost at all. Okay, this is a little challenge. To achieve a data centre with a PUE of 1.1. And some people are scratching their heads saying, can it really be done in Australia? Well, I challenge people to say it can be done, but it's going to be done the right way. And no, it can't be done in Darwin. No, it can't be done in the warmer states, not that kind of PUE. But like I said, in a place like Melbourne with a relatively cooler climate, a PUE of 1.1 and breaking the 1.1 barrier is quite feasible. Canberra, I believe we can go down to 1.07. They've got the best cooling hours in Australia, more so than Tasmania, which surprised me when I checked the numbers, but they do. So there's a challenge. Now, what I'd like to do at this point is open the floor to questions.